Earthlings, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of And Another Thing with Dave. I just kind of wanted to do a personal introduction to this episode. A thank you. It's kind of a year-end episode. There's going to be two more episodes in the year, and Freedom Rain is going to be my guest wrapping up the year. I met him on the Stereo app, and I'll read his bio right here. Freedom Rain, Oakland, California, music, poetry, elementary teacher in graphic design, individual thinker and destroyer of narratives. We get into it about why education is not free in the U.S. This is going to be a great podcast. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you to all the listeners from throughout the world. We've got listeners from India, the United Kingdom, Canada, Romania, the Netherlands, Russia, Thailand, the Czech Republic, and many more. Thank you so much. I am humbled. All right, let's get into it. Hey, can we do a little intro? Like, why don't you introduce yourself? And then I'll follow suit, and then we can jump in, man. I'm super psyched to have you on the line, man. I'm super psyched you approved the show. It was a last-minute idea, and I thought I couldn't think of anybody better to talk about this topic with than you. So
right on. I really appreciate the invite. Yes, I'm Freedom Rain. I've been on Stereo since November last year. And I'm also an elementary school teacher. I used to teach kindergarten. I pretty much taught every grade you can teach up to high school. I have not taught high school. And I'm also pretty active in my community, doing things like social economic work and volunteering and doing some work with the homeless. But yeah. And you?
Right on. And there it is in a nutshell, my brother. Right on, fighting the good fight. Yeah. So myself, I am. I'm a political activist. I've got interested in this type of, in that type of function around about 5 years ago, which is when I started my podcast, right? Because I'd be having these deep conversations with a couple different friends of mine. Mm-hmm. And afterwards, I would be like, man, that was a radio show, but nobody's going to hear what we just talked about for 2 hours except for you and me. And it was killing me. I'm like, because, we were covering good ground. And so I started a podcast, and I just kind of haven't made a dime doing it, but that's not the motivation, right? The motivation is just to talk to people. Like my one of my taglines is, I'm not telling you what to think, I'm just telling you to think, man. Right?
Yeah.
Don't believe corporations. Think for yourself. A corporation or a government never has your best interest in mind. They're always looking at their bottom line.
Right. I was just looking at that article right before you called about how 37 members of Congress got caught violating their own insider trading laws, and that the penalties are either usually waived or about $200, which is pretty much nothing if you just made a killing off of some insider knowledge that you're self-regulating in that governmental body. So you're absolutely right.
I would venture to say you and I getting pulled over at a stop sign for like doing a California stop, for the people that aren't in the state, that's when you just kind of tap your brakes, but you don't really stop.
Right.
I bet the fine for that's more than $200. So we're getting fined more for something, a routine traffic stop.
Right.
90% of the time when I do that, and I don't even like to do it anymore. I try not to do it anymore. But when I used to do it, I would only do it if I looked around, and 90% of the time at night. You look around, there's no headlights, there's nobody coming. You're good.
Right.
But with corporate crime, are we ever good?
Well, and it just shows that our governmental system kind of incentivizes that kind of bad behavior. So then if we're talking about money into politics, we focus on the small players where the rubber meets the road. We never even get to the point where we're reevaluating the system as a whole, because we've got bad behavior being incentivized to the point where even Uncle Joe, who ran for Congress, is doing stuff, So yeah, you're absolutely right about that, man. Is that we got to get money out of politics if we're ever even going to have a chance at unbiased for the people um, policies.
Well, and I love what you just said about where the rubber meets the road, right? Because we could talk about, the only things that the lame, I like to call it the lamestream media, right? Like anything you're going to get on over like cable, right?
Hmm.
It's so tired. It's so just a loudspeaker for the corporation that it's obvious, right? And
Period.
it's so they don't have any ideas. They're not offering anything. They're just like, oh my God, right? Like fear, 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 fear,
Yeah,
fear, fear,
sensationalism.
problem, 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 right? But no solution.
Right. Okay, but what would you say to someone who says, I don't know the percentage, and I definitely don't want to underestimate people, but what do you think about the general American public being completely satisfied and invested in that? Like, you're saying it's obvious, and to me it is too, but I have a couple family members of the older generation. Everything they see on the news is true. It's undisputable to them. What do you think about
Straight
that?
up, straight up. My mom loves Joe Biden,
Yeah.
you know, thinks he's a good Democrat and thinks he's actually very progressive. And I love my mom, so I just had to bite my tongue.
Yeah, that's how I'm on a lot of these
Yeah.
issues too.
And I'm not a Republican, people. I need to say that. I'm not a two-party guy, right?
I'm not
I,
a two
I'm
party guy either.
right. I'm done with that. Done with that. I've been let down. And I'm
Absolutely.
50 and I'm 54. So I'm not talking about like, I got a little bit of time under my belt, right? Where I've seen consistency by both parties, right? And so what I see now is both parties being, it now what we have is the consolidation of our political system to the point where we have the
Period.
left and right of the corporate party.
That's all it is. And the thing that they've been really good at this last couple years, especially in 2020, is using each other's mistakes um or outright transgressions instead of saying, hey, the system is broken, we need to change this so this doesn't happen. What they'll do is the right will say, oh, look at the left, we need to implement more changes and more restrictions that are ultimately hamper
Right.
you and me, the original I mean the
Mm-hmm.
average citizens. And then when the right messes up, the left will say, oh, we need more oversight. They play this game of tennis with our rights that they never get in
Exactly.
trouble. We only lose it. And the American people are so caught up in it, like, yeah, teach those right wing conservatives. Yeah, I'll give up my rights. Just teach them a lesson. And then when Joe Biden or our new Democrats in office, the right is like, oh, look at them. Look. And we don't get that by playing this tribal mentality back and forth tennis game that power is only getting consolidated further. The richest corporations are only getting richer, and we're the only ones losing liberty and rights. But we're so invested in this spectator sport mentality, you know.
Thank you. That was brilliantly worded. I love the way you said that, and I could not agree more. What I think is the epitome of that, brings that to like, just shines a light on the heart of that issue
Mm.
is how really nothing happened. Nothing changed between Bush and Obama, right? Stuff got
Mm-hmm.
so dark during Bush, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, you lied us into war. Like by that time, it was like 500,000 dead Iraqis. Like really for a lie?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh damn. I mean, granted, we lost some people, but
Absolutely.
it was Saudi Arabia, man. And we
Right.
still fund them. We still fund them. And Israel might have been involved because they were the dancing Israelis, right? Like
Right.
on the roof of a van that day, and it was
Yeah.
just too weird. So, but
Yeah.
but we don't investigate that. We don't investigate that at all. We just go blow up a couple countries. And there was actually a quote that I heard, and it was George Bush saying to the CIA, or it might have even been to Colin Powell,
Mm-hmm.
one of those. Don't quote me, but it was basically Saddam Hussein, 9/11, find me a connection.
Mm.
Like we're gonna invade, give me the reason,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, you're absolutely right. And as it ties into our discussion today, why college is not free, it's the same thing about the political system. Is this, and I think me and you